All right, Algebra 1 people, this is your Chapter 4 study guide. I'm going to go through all of the answers just so you can see. Feel free to skip around, skip over the ones that you know you got right, jump to the ones that were more difficult, or you can watch the whole thing. Anyways, we're going to start with number 1, saying write the slope-intercept form. So right off the bat, I'm just going to remind you that's y equals mx plus b. So slope-intercept form of the equation with the given characteristics. So for number 1, you're given a slope and an intercept. So all you had to do was plug those two things in. Y equals 1/4 x plus 2. You're done. Number 2 gives you a slope and then gives you a point that passes through, that the line passes through. So I know -4, 7 is somewhere on this line, and I know that the line goes through it. Now, I do know that that is not the y-intercept. So instead, I have a point and a slope. So I'm going to write this in point-slope form, which just to remind you what point-slope form looks like. That's y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. Okay. So I'm going to plug my stuff in. Okay. Y, this is my x and my y value, or x1, y1. So y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. Slope was given to me. Opposite of 7 is a -7. Opposite of -4 is a +4. I'm not done because I wanted it in slope-intercept form. So from here, I am going to have to do a little math, and my goal is for it in the end just to say y equals. Well, first I'm going to distribute to get rid of parentheses. -3/2 times x is just -3/2 x. -3/2 times a +4 is a -6. If you don't know how I got that, you can punch it in calculator, or you can go off to the side. I am going to completely ignore the negatives and positives because I know a negative times a positive is a negative. Do this. 3/2 times 6, aka 3/2 times 6/1. If I multiply straight across, well, I'm glad I did this because, oh no, I just wrote it down wrong. 3/2 times 4. Sorry about that, 4. Because I'm multiplying 3/2 times 4. I was getting ahead of myself. Okay? 3 times 4 is 12. If I multiply straight across, 2 times 1 is 2. And then 12 divided by 2 is 6. So that's where that 6 comes from. So anyways, on the left-hand side, I have not done anything. So it's still just y minus 7. So all I did was get rid of parentheses. Then last, if I want to get rid of the 7, I'm going to add 7 on both sides, and I get y equals -3/2 x plus 1. That's my final answer. You're going to need to do this a few times in the study guide and on your test to put something in point-slope form and then change it into slope-intercept form. All right, number 3. Number 3, I don't have slope yet, nor do I have an intercept. Gee dang it. So I'm going to start off with slope. I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to plug them into my slope formula. Remember, I like to write my parentheses ahead of time. Okay. So, y2 is a -5, y1 is a +1, x2 is 2, and x1 is -2. Remember, y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2, so this looks like it is a -6/4. -5 minus 1 is -6, and 2 minus a -2, this becomes positive. And then -6/4 reduces down to -3/2. All right, so this is my slope. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did in the last problem. I don't care which point you choose. The last problem I only had 1 point, but now I have 2 points. I'll just take the one that says x1, y1. All right, so I'm going to use my slope here. And I'm going to say y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. So opposite of +1 is -1. Opposite of a negative 2 is positive 2, and then I'm using that slope I just found, and we're going to do the exact same thing we just did before. So distribute. I happen to have the exact same slope. Coincidence. Negative 3/2 times x is a negative 3/2 x. Negative 3/2 times a positive 2 is a negative 3. You can do the same thing that we did up here, use the right numbers, unlike I did the first time, but to figure out how 3/2 times 2 is just 3. I haven't done anything on this side, so this is just y minus 1. And then my final step here is if I add 1 on both sides, I get y is equal to negative 3/2 x minus 2. That's my final answer there. All right, over to number 4. So now we are getting into parallel and perpendicular lines. Don't forget parallel, all you need to remember is same slope. So that means whatever the slope of this line is, it's going to be the exact same as the slope of my line that I'm trying to find right now. Let's cover that up. Okay. So I can come up here and say, well, I know the slope of this line is negative 3. So the slope of my line is going to be negative 3 because they're parallel. And then I know it passes through this point, aka my x1 and my y1. And now we can do the exact same thing we did before. Write it in point slope form. Y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. Slope from this line. And then negative 5 came from the opposite of this number. Positive 4 came from the opposite of this number. Now we're just going to solve. I'm going to distribute first. This one doesn't have fractions. You're welcome. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 4 is a negative 12. And then lastly, I'm going to add 5. And I get y equals negative 3x minus 7. I do believe. That's my final answer. All right, look at number 5. This one says perpendicular. So you need to remember that perpendicular means opposite, reciprocal. Opposite, reciprocal. Now, the slope of this line right here is 1 over 2. So if I wanted to find an opposite reciprocal, instead of positive, my new slope is going to be negative. And instead of 1 over 2, it's going to be 2 over 1. That's what that reciprocal means. Or you can just think of it as just 2. So my slope is, negative 2. Can't forget my negative. This is my x1 and my y1. All right, now I'm going to do exactly what I did before. I'm going to do this over here. I'm going to say y opposite y1, which is negative 6, so opposite is positive 6, equals that slope that we just discovered. Make sure you can see it. Parentheses x opposite x1, which comes from this right here. We are going to start off by distributing. Getting rid of these parentheses. Negative 2 times x is a negative 2x. Negative 2 times a negative 7 is a positive 14. I have done nothing over here. And then when I get rid of the positive 6 by subtracting 6, I get negative 2x plus 8. That is my final answer. All right, that's my first section here, ladies and gentlemen. Every single one, my final answer, you can notice is written in y equals mx plus b form, although 4 of them I had to use this point slope form. If you're ever given a point and a slope, you're going to want to use that form. All right, let's look at number 6 through 9. Now these, I just want written in point slope form. Point slope form. So that's not nearly as bad. I'm actually going to skip number 6 for a second. I'm going to show you number 7. When I have a point and a slope writing in point slope form, all I need to do is plug in my stuff. So remember, this is my x1 and my y1. Okay. So y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1, and I'm done. Because I had the correct information, I want point and slope form, I'm given a point and a slope, I can just plug it in and I'm done. I don't have to do any of the other nonsense to use algebra to manipulate. That's it. Now I'm going to come back here. The reason that this confuses people sometimes is because I gave you a slope, but then instead of a point, I give you a y-intercept. But you need to remember that a y-intercept is, in fact, a point. It crosses the y-axis at 3, and the x value is a 0. So with that in mind, I can say, oh, this is my x1 and this is my y1. And I can say y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. Now, I don't care if you put plus 0. I don't care if you put minus 0. Sometimes people won't even put the 0, and they'll just say y minus 3 equals 2x. I'm actually cool with that too. Either of these will work, because you don't need the 0. This is typically what you would see for an SAT question, something like that. Like if it's a SAT question, it's multiple choice, or PSAT, whatever, you're probably not going to see the minus 0 because it's unnecessary. All right, now we already did 7. Let's jump down to 8. Point slope form, I need a point and a slope. I already have a point, x1, y1, but I need a slope. But again, parallel, same slope. So all I have to do is I have to look at this and say, well, let's cover this up. Slope of this line is 3/5, so the slope of my new line that I am going to write is also 3/5. And then y opposite y1. So y1 is a -3, opposite is a +3, equals slope, which we just discovered, x opposite x1. Again, same result as before, where if you don't want to put that 0, you don't have to. So y plus 3 equals 3/5 x is equally as correct. You can also put plus 0 if you want. It does not matter, because 0 doesn't actually have an opposite. 0 is neither negative nor positive. So plus 0 and minus 0 are the same thing. All right, last one in this section. Number 9 talks about being perpendicular, and then it gives me my point, so x1, y1. Perpendicular. Now currently the slope of this line is -2, or if we wanted to get more specific, -2/1. So my new slope, instead of a negative, is going to be a positive. And then instead of 2/1, it is going to be 1/2. So my new slope, that opposite reciprocal, is right there. Now let's use these two pieces of information. Y opposite y1 equals slope times x opposite x1. And I'm done. Point slope form. Boom. All right, flip to the back if you printed this out. If you did not, you probably won't be doing much flipping. All right, determine if the sequence is arithmetic. If so, find the equation for the nth term and the 20th term. So before we do anything else, we need to just say, is this arithmetic, yes or no? Well, let's find out. For number 10, if something is arithmetic when you go from one term to the next, the space in between each term is exactly the same. So let's find out. To get from 20 to 13, I have to go down 7. To get from 13 to 6, I have to go down 7. Oh, so far so good. I can just say it's arithmetic, right? Wrong. Check every single gap. 6 to -1, I go down 7. Now I can say these are all the same. Remember that number right there is called your common difference. And it is denoted by the letter D. D stands for difference. So because all of these distances or differences are the same, that's why it's called a common difference, I can say, yes, it's arithmetic. Now, if it's arithmetic, I need to find the equation for the nth term. So that comes from this. A sub n equals my first term plus my common difference times n minus 1. That's what we discovered when we did our notes. And all you have to do is plug in these two things, my first term my common difference, then you have your equation. Oops, sorry, got a little shaky there. So nth term, my first term in this sequence is 20. My common difference in this sequence is a -7. Now notice I'm not going to write 20 plus a -7. No, I'm going to write -7. So that's my equation for my nth term. Now if I want to find the 20th term, I'm going to use that equation. Okay. And I am going to say if I want my 20th term, that means n equals 20. Don't forget n is just the number term here. So my first term has a 1 here. My second term has a 2, so on and so forth. So you can do this by hand, or you could punch this in your calculator. But if you're going to do it by hand, be careful. Don't forget parentheses come first. Then multiplication, 7 times 19 is 133. And then finally subtraction, 20 minus 133 is -113. So my 20th term for number 10 is -113. Okay, let's go over to number 11. Whole new sequence here. 2, 4, 8, 16. There we go. So I'm going to check my distances here, and if these three gaps are the same, then I'll know it's arithmetic. Well, going from 2 to 4, I go up 2. Going from 4 to 8, I go up 4. I can stop right there and say, not arithmetic. Not arithmetic. Because these are different. That's it. Having some focus problems here. But if you wanted to, you could keep going and say the distance between 8 and 16 is +8. Now, there's definitely a pattern here. 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. That's doubling every single time. It's a sequence with a pattern. It's just not an arithmetic sequence. All right, let's come down to 12. Now, remember, if it's not an arithmetic sequence, you can stop right there and be done. So let's check 12. I'm going to check these three gaps. -1 and -5. Some of you might look at that and be like, shoot, I don't, what's the distance there? Is it positive? Is it negative? Am I going up? Am I going down? And that's fine. Quick trick, if you take any two terms, like -1 and -5, and you take the second one, so in this case -5, minus the first one. Second one minus the first one. That is going to give you how far up or down you are going. Notice it says -4. So that tells me going from -1 and -5, I go down 4. And I can do the same thing for the rest of them too. So let me take -5 and -9. So the second one minus the first one. -4. Let me do the last two while I have this. -9 and -13. The second one minus the first one. Just a quick trick for you. And that shows you that every single one of these gaps is -4. Well, gee dang it. All right, so now I'm going to write the equation for my nth term. Nth term, I take my first term plus my common difference times n minus 1, and I'm done. Now, I'm going to show you a common mistake. This is correct. Sometimes people will say, oh, I'm going to take -1 and -4 and make them -5. This is extremely wrong. Extremely wrong. Don't do that. I cannot squish these two together because the -4 has the n minus 1 hanging off the side. I can't do that. No bueno. Now, I still have to find my 20th term. So in this case, 20th term is -1 minus 4 times 20 minus 1. Again, you can punch this whole thing into a calculator if you want. Just for fun, that's what I'm going to do this time. So -1 minus 4 parentheses 20 minus 1, enter, you get -77. I will also do it by hand just to show you. 20 minus 1 is 19. negative 4 times 19. Well, let's see, here's how I would do this. 4 times 20 is 80, but I don't want 20 fours, I only want 19 fours, so that means it's going to be 76, because that's just taking away 4. And then negative 1 and negative 76 make a negative 77, so my 20th term here, negative 77, boom, done. All right, last one in this section is number 13, and we're trying to figure out first, is this arithmetic, yes or no? So I'm going to look at these gaps. 7 to 4, 4 to 1, 1 to negative 1. Now sometimes people get in trouble here, because they'll look at this and say 7 to 4, oh, that's going down 3. 4 to 1, oh, that's going down 3. Okay, this is going to be arithmetic, and they move on and start answering the rest of these questions. But when I go from 1 to negative 1, that's only going down 2. So instantly I can tell you this is not arithmetic. Done. All right, last section, 14, 15, and 16. Let's read instructions. Determine if the given lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Recap, same slope for parallel. For perpendicular, they're opposite reciprocals, and neither means literally anything else. Okay. Again, I put these in kind of a weird order, so I'm actually going to do number 16 first. Because I need to figure out my slopes here. 14 and 15, you cannot see your slopes right away, but 16 you can. So this top line, it looks like it has a slope of 3 or 3 over 1. I'm going to put it that way. This bottom line has a slope of negative 1 over 3. Now you might look at this and see why I wrote 3 over 1 as opposed to just 3. So, are these parallel? Well, are they the same? No, definitely not. So, obviously not parallel. Are these perpendicular? Well, if they're perpendicular, they need to fit those two words, opposite, reciprocal. Opposite, one's positive, one's negative. Check. Reciprocal, 3 over 1, just flipped, 1 over 3. Hey, nice. So these are perpendicular. That'd be the answer to this one. And that's because I can see their slopes. I don't have to do any work. Now for 14 and 15, these are written in standard form, so I gotta do a little work first. So I'm gonna start off with this top equation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it into slope-intercept form. If you know what you're doing, this doesn't take very long at all. First, I am going to get rid of my x term, or move it to the other side. So negative 5y equals a negative 4x plus 10. And then lastly, I'm going to get rid of this negative 5. I'm going to divide every term by negative 5. And I get that y equals, well, let's see, negative divided by negative is a positive. 4 divided by 5 cannot be simplified, so that's just 4/5 x minus 2. Now that's the same equation. This equation and this equation are the same, they're just written in two different forms. Now I can look at this and say, hey, this one has a slope of 4/5. All right, let's check my other one. See what that one looks like. 6x plus 10y equals negative 36, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did. I'm going to start by subtracting my x term, getting my x term to the other side. So now I've got 10y equals negative 6x minus 36. Don't forget these are not like terms, one is an x and one does not. And lastly, I'm going to divide by 10. Divide by 10. And I get y is equal to, let's see, negative 6 over 10. Well, negative divided by a positive is a negative. And 6 over 10 reduces down to 3/5. And then 36 over 10, I actually don't even really care about that. Now that I have my 3/5 in front of the x, I know that's my slope. But just for fun, 36 over 10 reduces down to 18 over 5. Kind of ugly, but again, that number doesn't matter. Because all I was really looking for is the slope, which is this right here. Now I can say, are they parallel? Well, are those two slopes identical? No. Are they perpendicular? Well, are those two slopes opposite reciprocals? Well, one's negative and one's positive, but they're definitely not reciprocals. 4/5 and 3/5, not reciprocals. So you would say these are neither parallel or perpendicular. Neither. All right, last one in this study guide is number 15. Same as before, or same as 14, where I'm going to have to do a little work before I can actually answer the question here. So I'm going to start with 2x minus y equals 10, and I'm going to change that into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, and I get negative y equals negative 2x plus 10. Don't forget there is a 1 right here. Anytime you've got a negative and a coefficient with no number in between, there's that invisible little 1. Important here because then I know to get rid of that, I can divide everything by a negative 1. And it looks like my final answer here is y equals, let's see, negative 2 divided by negative 1 is a positive 2x minus 10. So that's my top equation. And I know that has a slope of 2. And then we're going to move down to the bottom equation, which says negative 4x minus 2y equals negative 8. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get rid of my x term. A negative 4x I can get rid of by adding. So then I have negative 2y equals 4x minus 8. My last step here is when I divide by negative 2, I get y equals, let's see, 4 divided by negative 2 is a negative 2x. And then negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4. So y equals negative 2x plus 4. So now it looks like one of these has a slope of 2 and one of these has a slope of negative 2. Are those parallel? Nope. Are those perpendicular? Well, they are opposites, but they are not reciprocals. So this is also an answer of neither. And there it be.